again, we can see.
Okay, so all right, guys. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about one of the most important, probably the most important technology that makes VMware into an enterprise company. Without this technology, I don't think this company would have ever grown. This virtualization industry itself is running behind the technology that I'm going to talk, which is called vMotion. vMotion is a registered name or a technological term that is owned by VMware itself. Microsoft has similar technology between Hyper-V servers, but they call a different name. Zen server has a different name, but VMware vMotion is actually proprietary of VMware itself. So we're going to look at what is vMotion and try to configure it here in this lab. vMotion is a great technology. If this technology is been in the industry from 2002 onwards. When I started working in VMware in 2002, where the ESX version was 2.5. We are now talking about 6, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, 4.1, then 5, 5.1, and 5.5 and 6. You see so many versions, and every year, every 2 years, VMware released newer versions with advanced features and capabilities. But vMotion is a capability or a technology that was there even from 2002. And that is why this company has moved forward. That is why this technology has moved forward. If you see cloud and automation and all, the backend is actually vMotion is one of the major component of it. If vMotion was not possible, I don't think this technology would have ever reached where we are today. So it's a great feature. You will be amazed to see how that is working and how that is set up. So that is what we're going to explore today. So vMotion itself has improved and gone through different phases. In the beginning stages, 2002, 2003, 4 time period, vMotion had issues, application disconnects and problems. But today, vMotion is a very common feature that companies use. No issues, absolutely no issues. And it works with all major applications. So here we have 3 servers now. What we're going to do is I just want to give a brush up. So we went through quite some classes all days. You know now what an ESX server is. You know how to install ESX server. You know how to build VMs. You know the properties of VMs. Then we talked about the networking components, and we went through the networking, and I think everybody is pretty clear on networking and the properties. We went pretty deep into this, right? We talked about policies, we talked about security policies, traffic shaping policies. We talked about load balancing, teaming, right? A lot of things we went through networking, and networking is very, very important part. If you don't know networking, I think you cannot even work on a VMware platform, because that is where all the VMs and the communication is happening. If you do a mistake of moving a VM from a one port group to another port group, it could create problems. So when we talked about network, we did some practice, you guys created, and do you remember, Praveen, you may be remembering, before we started storage, I clearly told you guys to create port groups like this: UAT network, development network, protection servers, isolated switch. Remember, I told you to create these port groups on every
Yes,
server,
yeah.
and I was very much pointing you guys to make sure that in every server, see in 83 also you created like that. I told you in every server the port group name should match, correct?
Yeah.
And there is a reason for it, and that is what we're going to look into it today. So if you really know networking, you will be able to troubleshoot the problems with vMotion, and that is what I'm going to come to today. So it is very important that servers in a cluster, at least. We haven't started clustering. We will be learning clustering in the coming days, but a clustering in VMware is nothing but a group of servers together act as a large pool of resources. That is what a clustering in VMware means. VMware clustering is very hot topic, and that is how actually enterprise network, enterprise environments are running. We will get into that in a day or two. But what I'm saying is, so in a VMware cluster, let's say you have 10 ESX servers in a cluster. One of the thumb rule for configuring vMotion is the networking configurations on all that 10 servers should be exactly same. If there is a human error or anything, a typo could create issues. So it is very important that when you build and configure servers into an existing cluster or building a new cluster, you have to make sure that every settings are correct and matching with other servers in the cluster. Not only the names, if you look at the properties, listen to this carefully, okay, because this is where I'm going to give you some solutions where you will be troubleshooting the problem. And that will be interesting. We'll see how you guys will approach that. So for example, if you look at this switch and if you go to the properties of the switch, let's say you have a NIC teaming properties, you have this notify switches is no for this particular server. But notify switches is yes on 83 and 84. These two servers, it is yes. That is not good for vMotion to work in a cluster. You getting what I'm saying? All the settings also should be same across the board. It is not just the name. If there are changes, vMotion may not work sometimes. Okay, so keep that in mind, because when we are troubleshooting, that is how you will be solving the problem. You got to go and fix the problems. Okay, so switching is very, very important.
Yes.
Networking. Yeah. Any questions?
Yeah, Cherian. Like in that case, should the VM also have the same configuration with all the others?
No, VM's settings are not important. The networking component is what I'm saying. VM can be having different settings. A VM with 4 gig memory or 8 gig memory, a VM with 2 CPUs or 8 gig RAM, doesn't matter. VM can have different settings. It doesn't matter. So we'll talk about it. I haven't talked vMotion yet, but I'm just preparing the setup for it. After networking, what we learned? We learned about storage, correct? Different storage technologies. We learned about fiber channel storage technology. We learned about iSCSI
ISKC,
technology. And then yesterday we went through NFS, right? We
NFS.
talked about NAS, and then we see NAS has two protocols, SMB and NFS, and we talked about NFS. We configured NFS. In the previous class, we configured iSCSI. Why are we doing all these storage technologies? Why did we learn these technologies? What do you think? Okay, we learned fiber channel, iSCSI, and NFS. What was the real goal behind learning those technologies? Anybody?
External storage.
Okay, they are external storage. That's correct. They are external storage. They are not local storage. They are from VMAX or VNX. We went through all that. They are external storage. Why are we depending on external storage? Anybody? To do vMotion,
Performance.
okay, no, not performance. Performance is actually, Ashish, I know you are a storage guy, but let me tell you, performance will be faster always on the local disk. There is no latency, no network latency, nothing. If you can put solid state drives on a local server, I don't think anything can match that, right? You get the highest performance in that case, provided the correct read and all if you can use. No, that's
Okay.
not the thing. So, I mean, performance is
We
there.
can
I'm not saying performance is not there. If you use Vmax and others, with heavy cache and all, you definitely get high-end performance. But that's not the thing. I'm looking for an answer here. I will tell you. Don't
we
worry.
can
Yeah.
we can
We
access
can.
them remotely, like from a different location.
No. I mean, these are all answers, but
Storage vMotion. Storage vMotion.
okay. All right. We didn't learn about storage vMotion. We didn't learn about vMotion. We're going to learn vMotion. So let's not get on to those things. What I am trying to tell you, or what the answer I was looking is sharing a storage between multiple servers. Is that correct? If you have an external storage like iSCSI or NFS, you can share a LUN between multiple servers. Is that correct? That is
Yeah,
what
yeah, Chairman.
exactly we did, right? We have the storage iSCSI 001 is attached to 82. If you go to 83, you can see that iSCSI 001 is there. If you go to 84, you can see iSCSI 001. It is one storage. So if you look at this in a picture way, you were talking about 3 ESX servers, right? These are 3 servers and they are running some VMs. Let's just assume that these are VMs running on these servers, okay? And we have this iSCSI storage or NFS storage, and this storage is shared between all the servers. Correct? This is what you're seeing here, correct? So this VM we created here, this VM is probably created in this storage, this VM is created here, this VM is created here. So all these VMs are now sitting on a shared storage and all the servers can see that storage, isn't it? So that is the advantage of external storage. Let's take a step back. Every server has a local hard disk, correct? You created RAID 5 and RAID 1 and all, right? This is a local hard disk, correct? This server also has a local hard disk. This server also has a local hard disk. Let's assume these are local hard disk, okay? Let me ask you something. Can this storage, local storage underscore 84, this is 84, this is 83, and this is 82, right? Our servers, these 3 servers, 82, 83, 84. Can you access the 84's local storage, which is this storage, from 82 or 83? Is it possible?
No.
There is no connection between that. They are local to it, correct?
Yeah.
So shared storage is a technology, I mean, it's a technique where you can share that same LUN, same storage between multiple servers. Not to 1 or 2 or 3. You can go up to 32 servers or even more. So one of the key requirements to do vMotion is you have to have shared storage. If you do not have a shared storage, you cannot do vMotion. Now, I haven't talked about vMotion. Let's hold on that. But you cannot do vMotion if you do not have shared storage. That is another requirement. So I told you, first requirement of vMotion was you need to have same network settings, correct? All the servers should have the same networking, properties, everything. That is needed in order to do vMotion. You need to have shared storage in order to do vMotion. Now, yesterday I was talking about Windows servers. Let's take a step back here, okay? So you have a Windows server here. Let's say this is a Windows 2008 R2 server, 2008 Windows server, okay? And I have another Windows 2008 server. And let's say you got a storage, your SAN administrator, this is like a big VMax or something. There is a LUN, the storage administrator provided, and he's going to provision that storage to these 2 servers. Can you just attach a storage between 2 Windows servers?
Yes.
You
It's a
can,
Microsoft cluster.
right, that is what I'm saying. Yesterday I was talking, you can attach it only in the case of a Microsoft clustering service. If you have Microsoft clustering solution, then you can do that. Otherwise, you cannot attach a hard disk between two servers. You cannot do that. So you need to have specific clustering software in order to share a hard disk between two Windows servers. Because I mentioned yesterday in the class, about disk signature and things like that. But that is not the case in VMware. Did we do anything special? We just formatted this with VMFS file system and it was able to attach to all the servers. Now all the servers can see it. We didn't do anything specific, right? They are not in a cluster. They are all standalone individual ESX servers, but they can all see the same LUN. They can all see the same NFS volumes, correct? So this is the beauty of VMware. VMware uses this technology called VMFS file system. So actually, yesterday I talked about VMFS file system. The first point about VMFS file system is VMFS file system is a clustered file system. I don't know whether I mentioned that word yesterday in the class. VMFS is a clustered file system. We know, many file system. NTFS file system, FAT file system, EXT file system. These are all different file systems used by different operating systems. VMware uses VMFS file system, virtual machine file system. That file system is a clustered file system. What is that means? The clustered means it can be shared between multiple ESX servers. Multiple ESX servers can read and write to that at the same time. You getting what I'm saying? So same time, 10 ESX servers. So if you have a shared storage here, 10 servers can at the same time write and read to it same time. It uses some locking mechanisms and all internally. When we get on to storage vMotion and all, I will try to explain that, how that locking happens. But VMware uses some very complex algorithms to manage that. You getting? So this is the another beauty of this technology. It is not that possible. Avinash, you are a storage guy. You know about it, right? It is only in the VMware industry or in the VMware world it is possible to do what I am talking about in sharing a disk between multiple servers. Okay. All right. So that is being said. Now let's get on to vMotion. So in order to do vMotion, let me do some painting here to show you something. Then only I can explain this. Okay. So I'm going to draw a ESX server here. If you're not understanding what I'm drawing, stop me and ask me the question. So this is one ESX server. This is another ESX server. I'm just drawing only two servers, but you can have more servers when we're doing vMotion. So this is two ESX servers. And let's say this is a shared storage, okay? These are shared storage between these two servers. So this is, let's say this is a iSCSI storage. iSCSI storage 01, and this is iSCSI storage 2, okay? And our server is having a VM. There is a VM here. Let's give it a color. So this is a green VM. So when you create a VM, it has a working directory, correct? And that working directory will have the VM's files like the VMX file, the VMDK file, the swap file, the log file, all the files that constitute a VM, right? A VM is nothing but a set of encapsulated files. All that files are sitting in a folder in the data store, correct? So when you create a VM, that VM will be in this data store, correct? Any questions here? So that is green VM, and the green VMs folder is this. Everybody following me? Then I'm just going to give a color here. So this storage is shared between this, and this storage is shared between this server. This server is also shared between this, and this is how a multi-path thing, and this is how in good companies storage will be shared. You will have multiple paths. You have 2 HBAs. You know, when we learned storage, we talked about HBAs and all. So this is a shared storage. If you have another VM, you are here, but I'm not drawing more VMs. I'm just trying to show you only one VM at this point. Let me change the color of that VM to a blue color. Okay, so this is a blue color VM. Then I'm going to draw a switch here. This is a Cisco switch. Let's assume that this is a Cisco switch. Okay, this is my painting. You don't worry about it. This is a Cisco switch. Okay, that's enough. And then I'm going to draw this VMNIC 0 connected to here. VMNIC 0 connected to here. This is the management interface. Let's assume this is like the management interface or the vMotion interface. We'll talk about that in a minute. So these are the networking connection. There are other NICs, VMNIC 1, VMNIC 2. I'm not drawing all the NICs, but this is the 2 NICs. Okay, maybe I can draw both here. So let's draw this both here. All right, you're following me? These are the 2 connections to the switch, correct? These are, I'm talking about, what are these links called? Can anybody give me the name for these 2 links? These network cards have a name. What is it called? Anybody remember? There is a name for it. Come on, guys. A network card attached to a vSwitch is called a name. Anybody? They're called uplinks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Uplinks, correct? Any doubt?
Oh.
Okay. So we have uplinks there. So this is ESX server 1 and this is ESX 2. So these are the 2 ESX servers. So what we are trying to do here is, I'm talking about what? I'm talking about the technology called vMotion. So what is vMotion? vMotion is actually this technique. This is what is vMotion is. vMotion or VMware vMotion moves live. You have to read this line by line, okay? Especially when we are learning technological terms or technical books, don't read it like novels or anything. You will miss a lot of things. If this one line itself is very important. VMware vMotion moves live running virtual machines from one host, that is from one ESX server, to another ESX server while maintaining continuous service availability. Please read that one more time, all of you. So I will give you the correct definition for vMotion now. vMotion, listen to me, okay? vMotion is the process of moving a running virtual machine from one ESX server to another ESX server without any service interruption. Every point, every word in that complete statement is very, very important. If you miss one, you will miss a very good portion of it. Let me repeat it one more time. vMotion is the process of moving a running virtual machine. You keep that thing, running virtual machine. If you are moving a powered off virtual machine, it is not called as vMotion. That is why the meaning running virtual machine. a powered on virtual machine. So Vmotion is the process of moving a running virtual machine from one server to another server. That is not Vmotion. Without any service interruption, without any issues. If I move a server from one server to another and during that time all the connections drop, the server reboots, does that make any sense? No. You should not have any problems. Without any problem. Now, can you imagine this? Today, Vmotion has improved a lot. I told you Vmotion is a process that started many years back. Today, with VMware vSphere 5.5, you have a data center in New York. Let's say this is in New York City. You have a data center. You have a ESX server here in New York City, and there is a VM running here. And you have a server in London. This is in London, New York data center. And you have a ESX server here. You can move this VM. So this is a VM. Let's just assume that this is Bank of America's website is running, www.bankofamerica.com. When you get in, probably this is the server that is providing the website of Bank of America. Hundreds of thousands of people are connected to this server and doing credit card transactions and other online banking activities are happening. In the middle of the day, 11 o'clock in the morning, you are moving this server right from here to here. Can you imagine that? The server will be now, it is gone from here. The server is going to run from here. The thousands of people who are connected, they don't even know that I moved the server from New York to London. Can you think of that? Is it possible? Guys, believe me, it is absolutely possible. And it is tested and companies are doing it. In fact, in my company, we do geographical vMotion. This is geographical vMotion. I'm not going to get into it. I don't have a lab to show you a geographical vMotion, but this is possible today with vSphere 5.5. We are not talking about London to New York. We are talking about vMotion, or we're going to demonstrate, or I'm going to show you a vMotion within a data center. Let's say this is your New York data center. In this New York data center, you have a server here and you have a server here. These are two servers here, and you have this VM running here. You have a shared storage, and just imagine it's a shared storage. This VM is sitting here. We're talking about moving this VM from here to here. There are two different, separately different servers, correct? This is an HP server, that's another HP server. You're moving this VM. Now you're not, when you're moving, the VM is not having, even losing a ping. No connection disconnects, no reboots, no application issues. There are hundreds of people using this server. They don't even know that you move the server from here. Is it possible? It is possible, and that is vMotion. So vMotion is not the process of moving something from somewhere to somewhere. No, it is not the process of moving a powered off machine. If a VM is off, I can move it from here to China. Not a problem. That is not called vMotion. If a VM is off, a VM is nothing but a set of files, right? If I can copy that files into a pen drive and I can go to China, or I can FTP that file. There are many ways I can send a VM from one location to another. If it is off, that is not called vMotion. That you can probably use the word migration or something. But vMotion is a whole different beast. In vMotion, we're talking about moving, running virtual machines. Enterprise class financial, pharmaceutical applications are running in the middle of the business day. You are moving. You following me? That is vMotion. Okay. Okay, let's move on. So I hope you guys are getting a feel of what I am coming to. So this is our environment. So the server is running, and I'm going to demonstrate with this picture. There is a reason I picked this. Okay. So this is our two ESX servers, and this is our storage. And in this, sorry, I'll give a different color to the storage. Okay, so this is the two storage, and we have this VM here. Now this picture is not complete. I'm going to continue with my drawings here. Okay, So this server is having a processor. Let's say that is one or two processor. I'm just going to draw. These are two processors, CPUs. Okay. This server is also having two processors. Then only the VM can run. The VM, when it is running, it is using these processors. Correct. This server also has memory. The local hard disk is there. I'm not drawing the local hard disk. Let's say this is the memory of that server, and let's say this is the memory of this server. Okay, I'm just putting this. This is the memory of this in RAM. So this is the RAM and this is the CPU. Just imagine. Okay, I want you guys to picturize what I'm doing. So when this VM is running, can somebody tell me when this VM is running? It is running now. Okay, that is why it's showing blue color. When this VM is running, its state, a state of a VM is the current active memory. Where is it running? Where is that memory sitting? That memory is actually sitting on the real server's memory, correct? Everybody following me? Hello, guys? Okay. So when this VM is running, that active state of that VM is actually sitting here in this memory. This may be a 20 gig memory, but it is using this VM. Let's say this VM is 4 gig in size. Okay, let's say this VM is having a 4 GB RAM. That memory, this is the 4 GB memory. So that I'm going to give it a green color here. See, that is that memory. This VM's actual memory is sitting on the real server. Are you following me? That is how virtualization is, correct? This VM's memory is sitting inside this. And this VM's processing is done by who? These processors, correct? These processors are doing the processing. So when you say a VM is running, it is actually using the real processor of the real server, and it is using the real memory of the actual ESX server. Is that correct? Everybody on agree with me? Okay, good. That is the truth, correct? When you have servers, so if you look at here, so, you have this 82 server. If you go here, you can see that 16 gig of this memory it is used. So every VM is actually, if you say this VM is using 4 gig memory, that means if this VM is using 4 gig memory, means it is using 4 gig memory of its host, correct? If it is using two CPUs, see here it says it has two CPUs. This VM says this VM is having one CPU. That means it is using one of the CPU core from the physical server, correct? So that is what it is. Now we're going to talk. I'm going to Vmotion this VM. Vmotion can be automated. We will learn that later when we get on to clustering. In VMware, there's a clustering feature called DRS, Distributed Resource Scheduling, which uses Vmotion. We will learn later. But Vmotion can be done manually also. So I'm going to do a manual Vmotion. I'm going to move this VM from here to here. That is what we want to do. So you cannot do just like that, because the VM's current state is where? Where is the current state? If you are seeing all this picture, you see this green color, you see my mouse is moving, you see all these nice pictures and all these things. Actually, can anybody tell me where is all these things you are seeing is currently on my computer? This is my computer. Where is all these things actually right now residing? Is it on the hard disk or is it on the memory? On this computer. It is on the memory, right? If you go to the task manager of this computer, you can see that 3.36 gig of memory it is using. See, for example, I have not Paint running, correct? If you go to the process of your Windows server, you can see Paint running. See here, there will be a Paint P brush. It will be P brush. Where is it? Or MS Paint. It will be MS Paint. See here, MS Paint is running. If I start a notepad here, you see here, if I start a notepad, so I'm just typing something. That means if you go to the process, you can see there is a notepad process is running. See here, there is a notepad, two notepad. I have two notepads here actually. See here, three of them. So there is three notepads. See, 1, 2, 3. That is because I have three notepads running. I have a couple of, these browsers are running. So Internet Explorer is running. You can see that. So everything you see in your computer screen is something or the other running in the memory. That is the terminology. So the actual technical term is, I would say, the active state of a computer is always where. The active state is what you see, what is you're interacting, what you're seeing, or what it is doing. So the active state of a VM or a computer is always in the memory. So if this VM is a web server, it is doing so many things. There are many people connected to it, and they are doing so many things. I don't know what it is. They may be doing credit card transactions, especially credit card transactions and all in a very highly busy financial application server. So the credit card transactions and all is happening. All that information is, where is it actually? It is sitting in this memory, correct? There are other VMs, they are also using that memory, but I am drawing only one server. So this is the actual memory. And it is doing processing also, it is doing this process. So can I move this VM just like that here? If I bring this VM just like that here, does this server has the memory, has that active state? It's not there, correct?
No.
So that is not possible. So we're going to talk about vMotion, how vMotion works. So you got the idea of all this, correct? What is vMotion? So again, vMotion is the process of moving a running virtual machine from one server to another server without any service interruption. Please by heart this. Don't use your phrases. I know a lot of people say vMotion is moving VM. No, make it that's how you can clear the interviews. That is how, when you go and talk it that way, no more questions. Instead, if you say vMotion is moving something, one VM from one place to another place is called vMotion, and you stop it, I will give 2 marks to you. Whereas if a person come and tell me vMotion is the process of moving a running virtual machine from one place to another, and okay, that is correct. And then he adds the word without any service interruption. Oh, great. I will give him 9 out of 10 or maybe 10 out of 10. You getting the difference? So try to talk more technical terms and talk that way. These are real life scenarios I'm saying, guys. When you're interviewing, this is how you impress the interviewer. So you got to be careful, and you got to try to keep learning. That is why I always say read. Watching my videos 25 times is not going to help you, believe me. You got to read. You got to understand and read. You got to read line by line. These are all important things to grow, okay, and to clear your interviews, to talk. If I'm able to talk all this, it's not that something that came from my practice. I read a lot. Before I start doing these classes and all, I used to read every day. I used to read, and even in my work, I spend at least an hour for reading new technologies. So it is very important. You got to keep reading and be on top of latest technologies. Nowadays, I'm working a lot on Amazon Cloud, and you know that I started Amazon class also. Very interesting. So you, first of all, you should have the interest. Don't take it lightly. Oh, okay, let me go and learn VMware for getting a job. If that's the case, I would say don't join this class or don't learn it. You cannot do that. You have to have that interest. Okay, great. Now that interest, you have to build it. Anyway, stories back. Let's get on to this action now. So I'm going to talk about a couple things here. vMotion requirements or prerequisites. Prereqs for vMotion. Very, very important point. For interview, I would say 200% time, if you go for a VMware interview, they will ask you this question. What are the prerequisites for doing vMotion? Okay, we talked about vMotion, doing all this, but can you do it simply like that? No. I already mentioned certain things, prerequisites for vMotion. Listen to this. since time is running, I wanted to finish it off fast, so I'm going to talk first point. You need to have, let me change this cap thing. You need to have vCenter for doing vMotion. If you do not have vCenter, you cannot do vMotion. For example, you have two ESX servers in your house or in your office. No vCenter. You can have, right? You can build a ESX server and create some VMs, correct? Probably you can share it between two servers. That's also possible. But you cannot do vMotion without vCenter. So it is absolutely a must that you have to have vCenter for doing vMotion. That's the first step. Second thing is you need to have same processor on source and destination ESX servers. Actually speaking, same processor family with feature set. These are some processor specific terminologies. We will get into this in detail when we talk about EVC mode and a little later. But what I'm saying is, if you want to do vMotion between two servers, both servers should have the same type of processors. If one server is having Intel processor and the other server is having AMD processor, absolutely you cannot do vMotion. vMotion does not work. In fact, if you really try to do something, it will blue screen your VM. Your VM will crash. So that won't happen because it won't let you do it. Anyway, that is the thing. You have to have CPU compatibility. The CPUs, the processors between both servers have to be same. Okay, that means okay, I have two servers, they both are having Intel processors. Can you do vMotion? Probably not. Intel processors, I don't know how many of you know about different type of Intel processors. When Intel release a processor, they give a code name for their processors. We will learn this more when we talk about EVC mode, but since I just wanted to put this here, there are different type of, you might have heard about Intel Xeon processors, correct? Nowadays, you may all familiar with i7 processors, Intel i7, Intel i5, right? Dual core, and these are all terminologies, processor related terminologies. That's not what I'm talking about. It is related, but there are different code names or family names that are given to every processor that Intel release. For example, Intel has a family of processors called Merom processors, Merom. After Merom, 6 months or 8 months later, they released a different family of processors called Pendrin processors. After Pendrin, they released Nehalem processors. After Nehalem, they released Westmere processors. After Westmere, they released Sandy Bridge, Ivy League, lot of different type of families of processors. They're all Intel processors, but they're all different families. What do you mean by different families? Different family means different feature sets, different capabilities. Processors have so much of capabilities, graphics and sound and many features. I'm not going to get into some hardware virtualization capabilities and all. So Intel always come up with newer processors, and every processor is having family. So what I'm trying to tell you here is, if you have a ESX server or HP server running a processor, let's say this is a Merom processor, M-E-R-O-M, Merom. Okay, this is a Intel Merom processor. And you have another server which is also running an Intel processor, but this is a Westmere processor. Okay, can you do a vMotion between these two? You cannot. because they both are Intel. You know what, Cherian said, this is Intel, you can do. That is what say you need to have same processor. Yeah, they both are Intel, but they are different families. You getting what I'm saying? So when you are buying servers, keep in mind, I know many of my students, after the class, they go and buy servers from eBay and all, and they try to make the labs, and then they call and say, hey, I'm not able to do vMotion. Okay. No, I bought the same servers. Yeah, they might have bought a HP DL380 G7. This is a G7. This is a G7. But unfortunately, this has a Merom processor and this is a VMware processor. Can you do vMotion? You cannot. So what I'm trying to tell you from here, these are all important things. You have to have same processor with same processor family and feature set. This is the key thing. You cannot do vMotion if it is Intel and AMD, forget it. But if it is Intel, there is some way you can do some vMotion even if they are different family, which we will learn when we learn EVC mode. Right now, just you understand, to do vMotion, you need to have same family of processors. That is the second prerequisite. The third prerequisite is you need to have shared storage between the source and destination ESX servers. I mentioned that, correct? You need to have a shared storage between both servers to do vMotion. Your VM that you want to do vMotion should be on a shared storage. Now with 5.5 there is a different way you can do without shared storage, but that is a little advanced topic. But let's not get into that now. You can do vMotion without shared storage in today's latest technology. We will address that later when we get on to some web client and all. But right now, just understand you need to have shared storage to do vMotion. The fourth requirement is source and destination networking, or source and destination. I think you know the terminologies. I don't think I need to go more generic. Source and destination port groups should have the same name and property. I told you that, right? The source and destination server should have the same port groups and the same properties. Not just the name, the properties also matches. Point number 5. No floppy drive or CD drive mappings. These are okay things. Your CD is not attached to, if your CD, for example, this VM now is attached to an ISO file. Remember, you used to attach ISO file to build the VM, right? And you never detached it. So there is a CD attached to this VM. If that is the case, it won't allow you to do vMotion. So you should not have, this is not a mandatory thing, but no floppy drive or CD drive mappings. You understand what I'm saying? You should not be having that. Point number 6, let me think. So these are the main things, but there will be some, yeah, I think these are the 5 important things. Let me think I'm missing anything. Okay, another thing. There is a feature called vMotion that needs to be enabled on both servers to do vMotion. You following me? There is a feature called vMotion. You have to turn on that feature on both servers. If vMotion is not turned on, you cannot do vMotion. Even if you have all these things, it won't work. So I'll show you how to do that. Another point is you need to have a separate VM kernel port group for Vmotion. You can do it without it, but security purposes and all, it is highly recommended to have a separate network, separate port group for Vmotion to work. You know what a VM kernel port group is. We created a VM kernel port group for a couple of things. Can anybody tell me where or in which services we used VM kernel port groups? Anybody?
iSCSI NFS.
Correct. iSCSI and NFS need VM kernel port group. There is another feature that we are using VM kernel port group from day one onwards. VM kernel port group is using from day one. iSCSI and NFS, I agree. Yes, you need VM kernel port group.
Management.
Perfect. Who is saying Avanish? Correct? Yes. Guys, remember, look here. Look at our server. Let's go to our server. Networking. Management, you're using a VM kernel port group, correct? You see here, VMK0 we are using, that is for management, correct? And for iSCSI, we are using another VM kernel port group. See that? So if you want to do iSCSI, you need VM kernel port group. If you want to do management, you need VM kernel port group. Like that, if you want to do vMotion, you need a VM kernel port group. Now you can use the existing ones, but you need a VM kernel port group. Okay, so these are the prerequisites. I'll just copy and paste it in the chat. Definitely, guys. Oh, it's not. I'm not able to paste it. I will send this as an email to all of you. But keep in mind, these are the prerequisites for vMotion. Believe me, you have to tell this. Okay, at least 5 of these things, and the most important things are vCenter, same processor, shared storage, port and destination. Everything is important except probably I would say no floppy drive and CD mapping is optional, but everything else is 100% have to be there in order to do vMotion. You see, if you want to do, it's not simple. If you want to do vMotion, you have to meet all this. Guys, let me ask you a question. Please open and talk. Did you understand up to what I said? Everything is clear for everybody. If you have a doubt, I cannot move forward. Is it clear? Everybody, any questions on this so far?
Yeah, Chairman.
Perfect?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. So now I am going to talk about how this vMotion really works. Okay. Now, believe me, even VMware course, they don't teach this like what I'm doing. Okay. But this is how you really need to understand how vMotion work. I don't know anybody sure like this. Okay. But to understand it, now you see, I can see that interest from all of you. You guys are listening very much. You know, it's a very interesting topic. I'm talking, you know, some rocket science I'm talking, but I'm trying to explain it in a nice way so that you will never forget how vMotion is. So I wanted to move this VM from here to here. So we have all the things. We have shared storage. We have networking on both servers, same. We have same processors. We have vCenter. All the prerequisites are met, correct? We have VM kernel port group and all. Now I'm going to tell you how vMotion really works. So when I say vMotion migrate, see if you can click on a VM, you see this option called migrate, and then you can say migrate. See here, change host, move the virtual machine to another host. This is called vMotion, but you see here vMotion is not enabled. So what we need to do for doing vMotion? First thing we need to do for vMotion is let's go and so let us do the vMotion first. I'll show you how vMotion works, correct? I told you yesterday to build a VM in shared storage. Did anybody do that for me? I told you to build a Ubuntu or a Windows server on a shared storage. Did anybody build? Praveen? Sandeep?
Yeah, Chairman. I built that Praveen underscore Red Hat underscore 02 iSCSI. It was in the shared one.
This one, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, so that is on the development network. It is on iSCSI external. Perfect, Praveen. Let's see. I can log into that server. We're going to vMotion that server. That is what we're going to do.
Actually, I haven't installed any OS
You
on
need
that.
to install any operating system. Then how do I show whether there is a disconnect? Anyway, I cannot do that now, but this is why I wanted to show you. Just putting that is not going to help. You need to have the operating system there.
Yeah, the reason why I was not able to do is I was not able to access that folder.
Okay, I understand. I know you had a problem with the storage. All right, let me not get into that, but actually this is not I really wanted to show. I want to show a real vMotion of a real VM. Then only you understand, hey, I didn't get any disconnect, but that's okay. Let's do this here. So what I'm going to do is we have a VM. So first thing I want to do is we need to create a port group for vMotion, correct? A VM kernel port group. So I'm going to create a VM kernel port group. Well, let's call it as vMotion. And you see here, use this port for vMotion. I'm enabling that. This is what is called enabling vMotion. You see that? I'm creating this port group here on the first switch, vMotion, and I'm going to give it an IP address. Let's ping and see. Can I give a ping 10.10.10. What is this server's IP? 70. So let's do this. 72 will work. Yeah, 72 is not pinging, so I think we could use that. Okay. Everybody following me? So I'm going to give 10.10.10.72. Subnet mask is 255.255.0. Done. And we created this vMotion port group and done. Oh, there's another point, I'm just remembering. Another vMotion prerequisite is you need to have a minimum 1 GB uplink to do vMotion. 10 GB preferred. Nowadays VMware says 10 GB is needed, but 1 GB you can do. I don't have a 10 GB here also. We are also going to do with 1 GB connection. So we have 1 gig connection here. Okay. So we created that. See here, everybody following me? So we created the vMotion port group. Let's go and do that on 82 also. So look here very carefully what I'm going to show you. This server, it is a dual core AMD Optron, right? It is an AMD server. So I can vMotion from here to this server. Can I do a vMotion from here to this one? This is a Intel processor. Can I vMotion Praveen's VM from 82 to 84? Is it possible?
No.
Absolutely not possible. Whatever I do, I cannot do it because this is Intel and the other one is AMD. So I lost one server. We'll try to fix it tomorrow before the cluster. But I'm just saying, you cannot do that. But we could probably do it between here. This is actually a AMD dual core AMD Optron. See, it is the same processor as that, correct? So we will be able to do vMotion between 82 and 83 for now. You following me? So let's go into this server and do the same thing here. I'm going to add a VM kernel port group. Let's call that also as vMotion. Enable vMotion. And let's give the IP address of 73 for that, correct? And just see 73 is used. Okay, we can use 73. 10.10.10.73. 255.255.0. That's a mask. Done and done. So we created vMotion is enabled on both servers. We created VM kernel port group. That is one of the prerequisites. We have vCenter. We've done all these things, correct? Next thing we need to do is we need to make sure that we have Red Hat Praveen. This is the VM we are going to vMotion, right? Which port group is this VM? Can anybody tell me? Which network port group is this VM currently sitting?
Development network.
Correct, development network. So you got to make sure that there is a port group called development network on 83. Then only you can move this VM to here. Otherwise, the VM will fail. So is there a development network here? on this server? We have, correct? It is there. So that part is done. Okay, so I think we done, and now this VM is sitting on a shared storage. It is sitting on a shared storage, correct? IceKC 002. Can 83 see IceKC 002? 83 can also see IceKC 002. Look here, if you browse here, you can see Praveen's Red Hat sim. This is the VM we are talking about, correct, Praveen? This is the VM, right? Praveen underscore Red Hat underscore 02, correct? This is the VM we are going to VMware.
Yes.
All right, so what I'm going to do now is, look here, this VM is running. Unfortunately, there is no operating system. That is not the way we should do. I normally do a ping test and all to show you, but unfortunately, I cannot ping it. So I'm going to right click here. So we have same processes, we have vCenter, we have same network, we have shared storage. I just want to make sure that there is no CD or anything attached to it. So I'm just making sure that the CD drive and floppy drives are all not connected. Everything is good. And now I'm going to do a vMotion. So right click, migrate. Now you see that this is, see, change host. I'm only changing the host. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to move this VM which is currently running on host 82. You see here, the current host of this VM is 82, correct? I'm going to migrate this guy from 82 to 83. Two separate servers. Next. And I'm going to click on 83. And there is a problem. This is how you troubleshoot the problem. There is a problem. I'm not able to vMotion it. Can you read this correctly, and can anybody tell me what is the problem? Let me see. I was talking continuously for so much hours. If you guys could tell me what exactly is this problem. The problem is clearly mentioned here, but you need to read and tell me, oh, okay, Cherian, that is the problem. Let's go and fix it. Can anybody tell me? Read that. Did we check if the VM is running? Okay, Anil is asking a question. Is the VM is running? The VM is running. You can see that it is green color and it is running. Absolutely, that VM is running. Here it is saying not running means VMware tools is not running because there is no operating. You know, VMware tools is something that we install inside the guest OS, correct? There is no guest OS in this case, so it's VM is running. Sure, it is on green. Anybody? Can anybody tell me? Avinash, you're a storage guy. Come on, man. You deal with vMotions and storage vMotions and all in your work. Praveen, think outside the box. I mean, it's written there. Okay, I'm not taking the time. Okay, it says. Yeah, it's what is that? What? Okay, go ahead. Let me hear your answer. Go ahead.
Like based on the error message, there is no network connectivity. It's not able to reach the network interface.
Okay. All right. That's not what it is saying. It is saying currently connected. We are migrating from where? Which host to which host? We are migrating this VM from which host to which host?
82 to 83.
Okay, perfect. Everybody is clear. We are moving from 82 to 83. Now 83 is telling this VM is currently connected to a network interface. It has a network adapter. One uses a network called development network, the port group. Okay. It is saying there is a network called development network which is not accessible. What that means is it is saying this port group is not here on this server. Is there any difference here in this? Can you tell me? If look at carefully, okay? I understand the problem. Is this same as this? Is there any difference here? Look at this, these two servers. The VM Praveen underscore Red Hat is here. See, Praveen underscore Red Hat underscore 2 underscore 0 is on this port group.
The spelling was different.
Absolutely. You see the difference? This was a very good example.
Spelling was different.
Correct. See the development spelling was different here. You see that, guys? That is why it is saying, hey, it's a different. That is why in my prerequisites, I very clearly said the source and port destination port groups now have the same name and property. This was accident, but you got a very good case. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? The name was different. So what we need to do to fix this problem? We have to go here, go to this here, edit, and change the name development. There is a E was missing here. Now they both look same, correct? Yes or no? This development and this development network, they both are same, right?
Yes.
All right,
Yes,
let's
Cherian.
now try to
Yes.
vMotion it. Migrate, change host. See, now the change host is enabled. Before it was grayed out. Why? Because now we enable vMotion, correct? Next, 83. It is still showing development. That is still, there is a spelling mistake. There is still a spelling mistake there. development. development. See here? Again, there is a mistake. There's another E is missing. Okay? Is it correct now? I believe now it is correct. Okay? So let's go here, migrate, change host, 83. Okay. Now there is, and this is a true typical troubleshooting, guys. If you understand what I'm doing, you will be able to troubleshoot any vMotion problem. Now we passed that problem. Yes, we fixed that problem, but now it is showing another problem. This is why I told you the configurations on ESX servers has to be same, and you have to be very careful. And there are other techniques to address that, where like host profiles and all we will learn later. But you understand the seriousness of this issue, right? It has to be same. Now it is showing another problem.
It may be the security properties may be different in that and this.
Correct. It is saying the offload security policies are different on the servers. Now what we need to do is we have to go to the first server, go to the development network. We need to only look at the port group. We don't need to look at the switch. Development network, and look at the properties of it. Look and see the properties here. Okay, everybody look here. I'm going to take a screenshot of this. Okay, we have the screenshot so that we can compare it. Okay, I am closing this, and now I'm going to take the screenshot of, not the screenshot, the properties of this development network here. It says they are different. Okay, so this is the second server's settings, and let me bring our screenshot here. Okay, guys, is there anything different here? Let's look at the promiscuous mode. Reject, reject. They are correct. Correct?
The
MAC address change is different. Correct?
address.
See, accept and reject. Accept, accept. Here it is reject, reject. Correct? Other than that, everything else looks same. Correct? So there is a problem on these two things. In this server, it is reject, reject, whereas in this server, it is accept, accept. Everybody okay with me? So what I'm going to do is,
Cherian, I had one question.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, like the active adapter should be also the same thing like the name one.
Yes,
like,
absolutely. You look at here, the active adapter is VMNIC 0. Here it is VMNIC 0. They are correct, right?
Yeah, I was just asking because sometimes we do connect a different network adapter, right? For example, if like for the first server,
oh,
for
okay.
82.
Okay, I understand. That is just the adapter. That is not a showstopper for vMotion, if you're asking. So on the second server, if it is VMNIC 1, it won't show you any problem. You understand, Praveen? It doesn't matter. VNIC 0, VMNIC can be different. That is not a problem. Okay? It doesn't matter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here and I'm going to change the security policy from here to reject and this one to reject. Okay, now they are reject, reject, correct? The first one is accept, correct? Was it? I deleted that. Guys, was it, anybody remember, was it accept, reject, reject, reject for all? I don't know. Let me see.
Yeah, it was all.
Yeah, it's a reject for all.
Yeah, reject. Okay. So now we fixed that issue. So let's try now again vMotion. Migrate. Change data store. Click on 83. And now we got it, validation succeeded. You see that? So you click next. There is a priority for vMotioning, high priority and low priority. Click next and finish. Now look at here what is happening here. It is vMotioning. See here, migrating virtual machine. See here, it is moving some stuff. What is migrating? This is the thing that you need to understand. What it is moving right now. Right now it is an 82. You see here? Now you watch here, it becomes 83 now. That server will come here now. Look here, 60. See? It is now on 83. Where is now Praveen's Red Hat? Is it on 82 or 83 now? Completed. Migrate vMotion completed.
83.
It is so fast. Did you see that? It is now in 83. Now I'm going to move it back from 83 to 82. Right click. Right now it is on 83. Migrate. Change host. Can I move it to 84? Let's give it a try. Oh God, look at this. There are so many error messages. If you want, just see this. What is the first error message says? CPU problems, right? Something, don't worry about it, but it is showing some CPU ID details and things, and then it is talking about vMotion is not configured, currently network adapter is different, and then the biggest problem is the CPU. You see that? You never can do that because CPU, you cannot fix it. Other things you can fix, correct? So we cannot do to 84. Let's go back to 82. Can you do that? Yes, validation succeeded. Click next, and finish. And look at it. When I'm moving, what is happening? You see there it is moving, migrating something. So what is it migrating is actually, it is migrating the active state of the memory. That is what is happening. That's a very important point. See, it is back to you see vMotion? Did I power on the VM? Did I power off the VM? Did any service? No, everything went fine. But unfortunately, there was no operating system to show you really what was happening. If you want to see it, please go ahead and build a couple of VMs there. You have 24/7. This lab is accessible to you. Please use this lab. As I said, when the class gets over, you may get the lab for probably for another 2 or 3 more days. When I start the next batch, I cannot give it to you. But right now, it is running, and as I said, my last month electricity bill was almost $800. So please use it. These servers are very powerful servers. They take a lot of power and they're running 24/7 for you. Please use the lab whenever you get some time and practice. It is not that easy as you think. When I do it, you watch it, you feel it, it's very good. But when you take your mouse and start doing it, you feel the pain. So it's only by practice you can do it. Okay. So that is vMotion. I hope you guys understand. That's a great technology, right? Just imagine you're moving. Can you imagine that you're moving from one server to another server? And this is an advanced version of this is geoclustering, moving from London to New York. It's not kidding. You can move it from London to New York. Big companies and financial companies and all are already done their planning in such a way that if a Sandy kind of hurricane or something coming up in East Coast, and if it is going to blast the whole of New York City, today system administrators in New York or New Jersey are not afraid of that kind of a natural calamity. If they think that there is going to be a problem, there is going to be a flooding, we can schedule our servers to vMotion from New York to Atlanta or New York to California. The business will continue to run. You following me? If it was 5 years back or 10 years back, there was no choice. You may have to put everything into a truck and probably you have to drive to California and then rack and stack 2 weeks process. But here today with this technology, with this great technology, you could vMotion, you can migrate your servers from one data center to another data center in a fraction of minutes or seconds. Isn't it great? It is great. And this is the thing that drives this technology moving forward. If people are talking about cloud and automation and all, this is it is. There is no additional step when OS is installed, Anil. OS is installed, absolutely no additional step, but if there is an OS, I could have shown you by opening this VM when you're vMotioning what was happening inside. Nothing was happening. I just want to make sure that your server was still running happily when it was moving. You don't even see, that's all. I wanted to show you that it was running. Everything,
yeah. Yeah, like if you see in the lab thing, we are having all the servers in New York. Like in New York, we got 82, 83, and 84. Let's say that in Dallas we got as 92. As you said that we can migrate from one place to another place. Like if you're doing that, when you select the option like thing, then it will be showing you the server 92 also, right?
With 5.5, that's a good question. With 5.5, you can only do vMotion within a data center. New York is a data center. You cannot do vMotion between data centers. But with version 6 that just came out last month, VMware is started supporting vMotion between data centers. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
If it is between data centers, you cannot do that at this point. It won't support. But if it is within the data center, it is. But with version 6, VMware supports that. Okay. Now 6 is just came out. Yeah.
Yeah, but before you said that we can if it is like New York and London,
yeah,
then 6 will be supporting, right?
Yes, absolutely. G6 is supporting even geo-clustering, geographically separated thing. Yes, it is supporting.
Okay.
Now 6 is just came out. People are still curious to know. No companies are really started using 6. Some small companies. Normally, my practice is we don't adopt a new version or a new piece of hardware, anything, until it get burned and people use it, and we see all these forums and So typically they come up with a service pack. Microsoft has service packs, right? Like that, VMware has updates, update 1, update 2, update 3, like that. So we normally wait for at least one update or maybe 2 updates before we use this in production. So ESXi 6 was released a month or 2 months back. No updates have come. We are expecting to have a new update. There is already a lot of bugs and issues are reported. They are working on it, so we expect VMware to come up with a new bug, probably a new release, probably by early next year. You're going to see people really starting to use ESX6 is probably by second quarter of 2016. And that too in a small scale. Most of the companies, financial pharmaceuticals are right now using 5.1 and 5.5, and we are learning 5.5. So if you go to any companies, I don't think you will be seeing 6, but 6 will be coming. Okay, nothing big difference. Some new features. That's it. Everything is same. Storage motion, vMotion, clustering. Everything is exactly same, but some new capabilities are there. That's all. Okay. Other than that, the technology has not changed. You know that I showed you yesterday a document. This document is from this one of the document I showed you for storage class, right? This document is a very old document, but still it is same applicable to 5.5, correct? So don't think that nobody can invent a new wheel. It was all being developed. So slow migrations, it's not big changes. So when you go from 5 to 5.5 or 5.5 to 6, everything in 5.5 will be there with some additional thing. It's just like Honda is releasing a new car every year, right? The brake light will be changed, or maybe the steering wheel will be having a different color. That's how it is, So that's what it is. This is all business for everybody, right? Cool. So you understand vMotion. So now let me get back and finish it off this. So vMotion, how it is really working. Correct? So I'm going to explain this now. So when I say migrate, you know all these things, right? We did this VM. We are going to migrate this VM to here. So we have the same network, same properties, everything is perfect. So, okay, so before jumping, Sandeep is asking a question. What if there is not enough memory in the server that we are migrating our VM? There is a memory management module itself. We'll talk about that, Praveen, but Sandeep, but if there is no memory there, it won't migrate. It will give you some error message. You should have memory. Now, in a VMware environment, there should not be a situation where you don't have memory. You know, you're talking about big servers with 500 gig, 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte memories, not hard disk. I'm talking about 1 terabyte, 500, minimum 500 gig memory should be there on every servers, and there will be memory most of the time. Now, if there is a situation where there is no memory, I mean, I cannot tell that answer now, but once we learn clustering and you learn DRS, distributed resource scheduling, you will understand how that is possible. When you migrate this guy, VMware will migrate 2 other guys from that server to somewhere else. That is possible, right? If I have 5 VMs running here, and I'm going to migrate this VM, but these 5 are using the whole memory. There is no memory left. I'm going to migrate this guy to here. What VMware will do, you know, in a real world, we haven't learned that clustering. When you try to do this, before that, VMware will move this guy and this guy out of this to another server. That is possible, correct? When these 2 guys go, there will be free memory, correct? Sandeep? So there are many mechanisms VMware uses, and we're going to learn. We are just starting the first capability. So it is interesting how VMware do all this. Okay. All right. So I'm going to vMotion this. So when I'm going to do vMotion, the first thing VMware is doing is, this is the actual theory part. Okay. What I'm going to talk now, how really this works. When you say vMotion, what exactly happens? You saw that migrating stuff. What it is doing is, it is going to copy this memory. Okay. It is going to copy this memory and going to move that memory through that VM kernel port. Do you remember we created a VM kernel port for vMotion? It will move that through here to here to here. It will copy and move. It is a copy and move. It is not just cut and paste. It is only copying. Only a copy will be moved. So what happens is, over a period, it will take, you know, maybe 1 minute, 2 minutes. If it is large amount of memory, it will take a lot of time. It will start moving this memory here. Now what happened? This VM is running, correct? This VM is running. Hundreds of thousands of people are making changes. So what is happening? This memory is also changing, correct? Whatever you copied is also changing. That changing process is called dirty memory. I copied the memory, but after that, that memory is good because this VM is still running here. You following me? There is a lot of things you need to think, okay, to understand this concept correctly. So VMware will try. That is why I mentioned you need to have a 10 GB connection. If you have a faster link, you can copy the memory very fast. So it will do that process for some time, if depending on the size of the memory. If you have only 1 gig or 2 gig memory and there is nothing much running on the VM, it will be fast. But if you have a big VM with 64 GB RAM and so much things going on, a vMotion probably will take 5 minutes. Anyway, it will copy this memory and back and forth and back and forth, and there will be a stage. There will be a stage at one time. This memory will be 99.9% same as this memory. That can happen, right? If it is fastly copying, delta, there will be a delta changes. A lot of delta changes happen, and there will be a time where it reaches, it is almost same as this. Okay, I'm putting a pause there. At that point, what VMware does is it does 2-3 things. Now, this is what you need to understand. At that particular, this happens in milliseconds. And that millisecond what is happened in that millisecond is what I'm going to talk for the next 5 minutes. Are you following me? It copied this memory, and now it is going to do the real cutover, and that cutover happens in probably less than 1 or 2 milliseconds, and that things that happen in millisecond is what I'm going to talk. Are you ready to listen? Okay, listen. At that point, don't interrupt me, let me finish talking and then we can ask. At that point, VMware do a couple of things. It will pause this VM, pause. It will just do a pause to this VM saying, hey, don't use this processor anymore. And then it will do a final cutover of the last memory piece and make that memory equal to here. So now this memory is 100% same as this memory. That is the final cutover. And then it will unregister the VM from here. You know, registering a VM and unregistering a VM. So this VM has all its properties sitting here in this file, correct? This VMX file. There is a file called VMX. You learned, you know, we talked about in the first class. What VMX file contains all the configuration information, correct? If you have a VMX file, you can create a VM. So it actually unregister the VM. They are not moving or anything. It is unregistering the VM from here. And this server can see the storage, correct? That is why you need the shared storage. This server will look at this VMX file and it will register a new VM here with this blue color, right? It will create a new VM here and pass over the memory to here and start. That is what is exactly happening. So I did 2-3 things, okay? It is cutting over the last delta and make the memory same. Then it will unregister the VM here and register a new VM from that same VMX file and then pass the control to this. When the control is passed, this VM will show the same pictures what you're seeing because this is the exact memory it was running and it will start running on these processes. Plus, it will do one more last thing. This switch, the virtual switch here, there is a virtual switch here that where the VM is connected, the development network, right? That switch will immediately inform the upstream switches, the network, Cisco switches and all. Hey, you guys, this VM with that MAC address XXAABB is now running on me, not here. So all that thousands of people who are trying to connect to this server, when it comes here, this switch knows that, you know, that VM is not here, that VM is here. They will send the traffic to here. Are you following me? It's very difficult to digest, but this is the beauty of the technique. There is so many things that needs to happen. Remember, thousands of people who are connecting to that VM. They are all going to still come here, correct? It won't happen. That is because of that upstream. It uses actually a reverse address lookup RARP protocol. It uses a RARP. You know about ARP protocol, address resolution protocol? It's a TCP/IP protocol. RARP is the reverse address. It will use that RARP protocol and inform the upstream switches that, hey, that VM, this VM now is here. I messed up that picture, but I hope you understand what I'm trying to tell you. Now, that is one of the point I mentioned in the switch properties here. When you have a switch property here, I told you in the NIC teaming option, notify switches should be yes. Remember when I told you notify switches should be yes. This is the feature that informs the upstream switches, hey, this VM is now here. If you turn this off, will it inform the upstream switches about the change in VM's MAC address? No. So that is why I told you, make sure you have these notify switches turned on. That is a very important feature for vMotion to work. I mean, these are all very advanced topic. I don't think I really need to go that much, but by explaining that, I hope you guys got an understanding of how vMotion works. You don't need to know this in detail, but migrating or moving a virtual machine from one server to another means it is not like, you know, Cherian was showing earlier, just moving something here. No, you are moving the active state of the memory from one server to another using these techniques. Now, one more point, and I will finish it off. It's already 11 o'clock. in this process, did we change the files or folders or anything? Did we migrate this? We didn't migrate. That was always there, right? So when you do a vMotion, you will not be moving the files of the VM. The VM's files will always sit on the shared storage. What are you moving when you are migrating a VM? So when we talk about vMotion, what is the thing that gets migrated? I've been telling so much time, guys. What is actually getting migrated when we do vMotion? The VM, no. Memory, correct. The active state, the active memory is what is migrating, right, Anil? The active state of the VM is what we migrated. We didn't move the VM, we unregistered it here and registered it here. The memory is what we moved. All the data, everything is in the storage. We only move that memory is what we moved from here to here. You following me? I hope you understand that, correct? So that is vMotion. Praveen, are you good at it? You understand? So this is the whole concept behind vMotion. Now I would say, I explained this. I think you got a good idea. Please go and read about vMotion and understand more about it. It is important. It is one of the most important topic in VMware, vMotion. Because going forward, when we get on to clustering and all, we will be seeing we are using this capability a lot. There are 5 more minutes. I wanted to talk one more point here. I told you the VM kernel port group we created for migration. We created a new vMotion network, correct? Typically, it is highly recommended in big companies. Your vMotion network should be a private network. You should not be using your like in my lab we use the normal 10 dot network, but you should not be using. You should be using a private network, a non-routable private network for vMotion traffic. Can anybody tell me why? You should use a non-routable private network or private VLAN for vMotion traffic to migrate the memory. Why? Because I am migrating on copying and moving this memory, isn't it? This is the memory I am now moving through this network. What is inside this memory? What is inside this memory? Highly confidential information, credit card information of many people, correct? And you are moving it through the network. Remember the Obama-Biden story that we talked about network? Somebody here who is sitting can easily hack that packet, right? They can get the credit card information, isn't it? So that is why when you're doing vMotion, it is highly recommended you should use a private non-routable network. If you can create a crossover cable and put a crossover cable between these two servers and use that for vMotion, absolutely fine. But when you have 2 servers only, you can do that. If you have more servers, you cannot do crossover cable. So it is recommended to have a private non-routable network for vMotion traffic only. In this lab, we did it through the normal network, but in a real world, you should do it through private network. For what? To protect the confidential information we are moving. This is the most common, this is raw data. Something in the memory is always the real data, correct? No encryption, nothing. You cannot do anything. That is where the real credit card, you can read it just like a clear text. So this is vMotion, guys. I hope I was able to explain this. I hope you guys understand. Read about it, come back, and next class, tomorrow we have class. We will talk about this a little bit more, but I hope you understand. Next class, we will be talking about another migration technology called storage vMotion. What we learned today is vMotion. Storage vMotion is the process of migrating the storage, the files and folders of a VM from one storage to another storage. Anil may be able to talk about that more. This is very, very widely used in the industry, especially when companies get rid of their old storage arrays and things. They wanted to buy new, move servers from one storage to another storage. What happens to the VM? What happens when you move these files? So storage vMotion is actually the process. When the VM is running, you are moving this storage from here to another storage. Can it possible? What all you need to know in order to do that? That migration, that process is called storage vMotion or SVMotion. So SVMotion is completely different from vMotion. SVMotion is a technique that VMware implemented very recently, probably like 3-4 years back. vMotion was there from 12 years. So we will be looking at storage vMotion tomorrow and probably some other topics. I hope everybody understand. So we'll stop here, guys. Thank you again. If you have questions, please feel free to ask. I can open it for 5 minutes for any questions if you have. Okay, thanks.